So today we have the Kurtz family, and we have 3 of the 7 generations of the Kurtz family here to tell the story, and with some photographs and some notes to share with us. And it's really about the Kurtz homestead to you, on Lake Vermilion, Pine Island. And we're going to start off with Katie Kurtz Walsh, and she's going to tell us the introduction to her journey to Lake Vermilion and Pine Island, and a bit about herself and her story.
So, I'm Katie Kurtz Walsh, and to this day I'm the eldest of the generations, and I slot into the 3rd generation. It was my grandparents, Alice McDonald Kurtz and Louis Clarence Kurtz, that developed Pine Island, which is now affectionately known as the homestead. And that cabin was finished in approximately 1921, and it was truly the brainchild of my grandmother Kurtz. My grandfather had very severe hay fever, as my father did too. And after investigating where they might go, my father ran into Ross Clemens, who was at the very end of Pine Island, and it was his suggestion that they look in to Tower, Minnesota and Lake Vermilion. So that is basically where it started, and I've been coming up here since I was in the womb, and maybe have missed 7 or 8 summers, but pretty close to making all of them. And my husband Marty and I have 3 children, and they have all come to Lake Vermilion, and presently over the years they have gone their way in terms of where they want to be, but our youngest son Brian is now the keeper of Moose Island, which my father's brother Clarence and he purchased in 1949. So he is on Moose Island, and I have now retreated to Birch Point. So I look at Moose Island, but I'd like to fill you in on a little family history, but I would truly like to have it go this way and then this way, and I think we can pull it all together better.
All right?
Okay?
Okay. So our next generation is
Right, Julie Mitchell Baxley, and it's very similar to these 2 ladies. Been coming up here ever since birth, and we always joke who's been conceived up here. Anyway, just we all shared. Mom was one of my mother, Mary Alice Kurtz Mitchell, was one of 6 siblings, and so all 6 siblings would share the homestead, and we each had 2 weeks in the summer. So, and then they rotated. You never really knew until I think after January who could have, the 4th of July, who could at the end of July. It just worked out that way. So, everybody cooperated. I just know in my youth, within the cousins, and there are a lot of first cousins, that, and we'll show you the picture in a minute, but it was so fun to overlap with cousins. They'd overlap the trade-off weekends, and it was just totally, whoever was there usually cooked for the people coming, and then it was wild as kids. It was a lot of fun. And really, we slept wherever. Our beds were now clean because they were washed basically in the lake and put out to dry. There were no washers and dryers. And so we really couldn't sleep in the bed. So we could, slept on covers or slept in the porch or whatever. It just kind of, for me, and actually I have a sister who has a cabin up here also, Miley Mitchell, Maine. And, for me personally, it's just the love and joy of nature, the lake. And obviously it's also a benefit of having family here. There's 13 different properties that the descendants have purchased or are keepers of, and sharing. So, I could go over that if you want me to right now, or.
So is the one homestead that has now blossomed into 13?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
And Julie, what years did you cover when you were born? What year did you start?
Okay. Well, the home with 6 siblings, as we all grew up, and we all grew. Obviously we grew up, unfortunately or fortunately, but it got crowded. The 2 weeks didn't work out as much because now part of the family was having babies. My older sister had a baby and that type of thing. So I came from basically birth to 1973. I just know 73 because I went off to college that year. So, and then there was about a 10-year break for me. But I knew, I bought a cabin, an old southern cabin in the south. I knew I was going to have a lake cabin. I wasn't sure it was going to be Lake Vermilion, but I knew I was going to have a cabin. And it wasn't until I came up to the reunion. It was our first reunion in 1994. Correct. I can show you the picture. This picture is at the homestead. And in 94, we all got together, and and it was a whole week. And of course, just loving the nature and that type of thing, went on a camp out. And it ended up camping out on Peanut Island. And then we got bored. I was with my daughter and my niece, Esty Fleming, and got bored and thought we'd go over to Grubens, get licorice or whatever. We canoed over to Grubens and passed an island that was for sale. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And didn't look at it then until I was with my brothers the next day and having some, had a few beers before we were going to have dinner. And I'm like, hey, you guys, come with me. Let's go look at this. And they're like, oh, yeah. Well, if the devil said sign here, I would have definitely sold my soul. I just knew when the minute I stepped on that island, it was just a small little island, that I was going to figure out how I was going to purchase that.
Well, there's nothing like a beer on Lake Vermilion that can make you make great decisions.
I know, you're right. Of course, my brothers thought I was crazy, and I had an uncle that thought I was crazy. I just knew. I had it in my heart. I just knew it was the right thing. And had the island for, over 25 years, and ended up, now I have one daughter, but she has 2 daughters. I have 2 granddaughters, and things were getting really cramped on the island. I wasn't ever looking for something else to purchase, but I canoed and kayaked a lot, and I went by this property just right around the corner called Wildwood Point, and ended up purchasing that. I prayed on it. My mother had already passed. I wish I would have been able to talk to her, but I didn't. And my husband's life was good to go, And I thought, is there enough of me to be able to, the tenacity, because it had a lot. It was vacant for 6 years, and it had a lot of work with the big W. So that's pretty much. And then coming up, that was in 2019, and it's worked. Sold the island the next year. I didn't want 2 places, and happy ever ending. What else can you say?
Great.
Yep. I'm 4th generation. Now we're going to the 5th generation.
I'm Michelle Carter Ernst. I am the 5th generation, which makes my grandchildren, which I have 5 of, the 7th generation. I am the daughter of Marianne Kurtz Carter, who was Bob Kurtz's daughter. So Bob was one of the 6 that Julie referenced. So there were, let's see,
6
Louis, Robert, Bob, Mary Alice, Helen Claire, John, and Nancy.
Nancy was right under Mary.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily
okay.
going in birth
Yeah.
order. And so my mom and her two siblings, Carol and Sheila, ended up purchasing the homestead when I was probably a senior in high school. So I'm going to say 1985, 1990-ish, around in there. And so that's the cabin that I primarily went to in my childhood years. At the time, it was when I was little, it was my grandpa Bob and my Uncle John and my Uncle Louie who owned the homestead. And then it ended up with my mom and her two sisters being able to buy it. And now my Aunt Carol owns the homestead. I guess I have this picture right here. This is me and my now sister-in-law, Kim, and my brother-in-law, Doug, and my now husband, Jeff. They were next door neighbors on Pine Island. The Rosenberger cabin, which would have been to the west of the homestead. Is that right? North, okay.
Close.
Yeah, well, you know. And now my husband and I own a place on Gold Island, and we've been living there for the past 5 years. And prior to that, his family purchased a place on Breezy Point. So do you have Breezy Point and Gold Island on that list? Okay, good.
I do.
Good. Okay, good.
I studied before.
Yeah, good. So I've spent, I think, every summer except for maybe one when I was a senior in high school up here, including when I was 4 months old. So been around for a while.
Wow, so you all have every single summer on your travels to Lake Vermilion.
Yeah, all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
People just all over. Yeah.
So,
I came up on the train. Maybe even in this car, who knows?
we're in Coach Car 81. This
Right.
could have been your travel.
Well, I was born in 1939, so this would have been the early years of the 40s. And I don't have specifics about the trains and all, but one of my favorite stories to tell is, and I remember it like it was yesterday, at that juncture of time, I was the fourth youngest of our family. I too am from a family of 6 children. So Clarence had 6 and Bernard had 6. My 2 younger sisters were not yet born, of course, and so I am the youngest, and I very vividly remember getting on the train here and being in the upper berth with my dad. And my dad had a sack of jelly beans. And he knew that we both loved jelly beans. Now that's about it. And then very soon after that, we started driving, and that was a real ordeal. I mean, we had to leave Des Moines at very latest 5:30 in the morning to be up here because it was a long, arduous trip. And in those days, my grandmother Kurtz, Alice McDonald Kurtz, who was the foundress of the homestead, would be with us. And as my mother said, we had everything but the kitchen sink in the car, and we did. And as Julie brought out, we didn't have washers and dryers and anything like that.
Lots of diapers.
But I loved growing up on Pine Island, and that is how I met Nancy Rosenberger, because she lived right next door. And so all the way up the Dells as the years mounted, more Des Moines people came because of my grandparents they would be her great-grandparents. And the other aspect I think that's very important for me to have people know is we are, Julie and I and her mother, Marianne, are all first cousins. And we all stay in contact today, which is really quite wonderful.
Well, that is.
The Dells are all were all primarily populated by Des Moines people, and there are a significant amount of Des Moines people. But I believe that the real credit of the establishment of the homestead was due to my grandmother, Alice McDonald Kurtz, who I referred to earlier. My father was born in 1905, and he came up here all his life, and when we got into the 20s, he met my mother, who was a very good friend of Ross Clemens's daughter, and they lived at the very end of Birch Point, and it was Ross Clemens who gave the idea to my dad to please go ahead and tell his parents to look into Pine Island. So it was as simple as that. But after that, my mother and dad married in 1930, and they honeymooned at the Birch Point Inn.
That's cool.
So, and the Birch Point Inn property now is owned by a young man by the name of Tommy Leonard, who is from St. Paul, and he is the best friend of my son, Brian Walsh, who's the keeper now of Moose Island. And I had the pleasure of being there 2 years ago, and I have a feeling that maybe I was right there in that little honeymoon cottage, because he bought the whole property.
Oh, he did.
Mm-hmm. But you know, in those days, there was a wonderful caretaker on Pine Island, and I'm sure you're all familiar with him, Glenn Bystrom. And Glenn and Genevieve's 3 children were born, and I got to every summer. That was very important to me, to be there with Genevieve. They were absolutely wonderful people. And then the other people that played a significant role in our being here and being able to be back and forth were Bill and Harriet Gruben. We first started coming through Aaronson's, and then the Grubens developed, and that is where we came, and Bill Gruben would take us across. And there was a deep friendship that developed between his wife and my mother, and then along came the Lyman Hugheses, and Lyman was my mother's brother, and his wife Pat and my mother were dearest friends, and there was a friendship that developed with Harriet Gruben. They were just absolutely wonderful to us. My time here at Lake Vermilion was very much between Pine Island until we did move over to Moose Island in 1950. Julie's grandfather and my father purchased Moose Island in 1949.
So was your launch then from Gruben's Point at
Yes.
one time?
Yes, yes. And then in due time, my father was able to purchase 3 lots directly across from Moose Island where we parked the cars. And it was a parking lot until 2005, when Marty and I had a very small, wonderful place built. And that's
That's where you are now.
That's where I am now, and it makes my life so much easier, obviously.
A non-islander.
Yeah.
And that's still the launch for your Brian?
No, actually, Brian, he works out of Birch Point Marine now, because it's important for him to leave a boat there. And so he can come back and forth and family coming back and forth. It's worked out very, very well to do it that way. And you know, when there's an overflow, certainly they can move from our dock to his dock, but they just have really worked it out so well because it's constantly ready for people.
So when we go back to your time of coming on the train,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember then going onto the steamboat to get to the island before there were roads as a child? Or is that
No,
not in your memory?
I don't remember that. I just remember that we came by train. And then as soon as my father had the car to drive up, then we came by car. Now, church was always very, very important. You didn't miss Mass on Sunday. And you were dressed for Mass on Sunday. Yeah, forget about jeans or anything like that, no. So Glenn Bystrom worked at Bill Grubin's and he had a car. So he would give my father his car to take us all into Mass on Sunday. Glenn Bystrom was a very wonderful man and became foreman of the mine, and just those people I will never forget. They've all shaped my life in some way, shape, or form. So that was the way it was then. But I was an island girl. I didn't have the fun that these two did.
We're going to hear more about that.
So,
Wait, Katie, did you want to say something about the big boat?
oh yes, the
You
wonderful
just got
cruise.
to.
Yeah,
this,
the
it's
wonderful cruiser. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and you will have a picture of that. But that was a 1935 30-foot Chris Craft, and it was a beautiful boat, and it was all over the lake. And my father, he was a wonderful skipper, and knew the lake well. And as Julie indicated too, when they moved over to Moose Island, that was then also shared by the family. So the Clarence Kurtz family would come up in July, and we would come in August, and always overlapped, at least a couple of nights. And we came in August because of my father's hay fever. And then when Uncle Clarence passed away, then my father became the sole keeper of Moose Island. That was all in their purchase agreement. And the homestead cottage went to the Clarence Kurtz family. So that's how this one comes into play, and this one comes into play. But anyway,
Kind of, I was just going to say, kind of going back to church, when my grandfather would drive the big boat, quote unquote big boat, and we'd hear it all the way down from McGarvey's, and it's like, it's coming, and my sisters would be pulling rollers out of their hair. You could not be late for my grandfather, especially on the big boat. You know, we'd be all dressed up, and by gosh, we are going to church.
So he picked everybody up from the islands, and he took you over to
From the
Rubens
homestead, from Moose over to the homestead. And then we went to Grubin's, and the big reward was Martilli's.
yeah.
Oh,
Martellus.
Just Sundays, and we
Oh.
got a quarter, and we could do all the nickel or penny candy that we wanted. And I can remember a few Sundays being sick. Too much. Too much.
But you know, in those days, we surfboarded. That was it. We didn't have skis.
Oh yeah.
No water. I mean, skis came after.
water
learned-
skis.
Yes, I mean, I eventually water skied, but that was not until I was a teenager.
Explain the surfboard, because the surfboard of today is so much different than the surfboard that
Yeah,
with
well,
that.
the-
A piece of wood.
yeah, it was just
And two ropes.
two ropes. In fact, Julie's father taught me how to surfboard. they were honeymooning up here after their marriage on the 23rd of June. And they came up to the lake, and we were here, and I wanted the surfboard, and it was your dad who took me out, and it was just a big board, rounded at the top with 2 ropes. And then at the very
Pulled by the
base,
bottom.
at the very base of it, there was a fabric piece so that you could get on the board and then eventually stand up on it so you wouldn't slip. And my daughter, Megan, who resides in Colorado, has that original.
Oh, does she? Good for her. Nice.
She does. She has it and wants to do something with it, which she will do.
And you stood on it while the boat.
Yeah, and then you know you rode the waves just like you do, the skis now.
That's one of my memories with my now sister-in-law when we were little kids was we got to do the surfboard thing with our dads.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And not the skis yet.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, the skis were around, but that's what we
That's
did
so
because we
cool.
were 3. I was 3, she was 4. That's my husband's twin sister.
So now are you going to pass that on to your grandchildren?
I don't know where that is. The board.
Oh, Megan has it,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I-
I mean the board that we used. I don't think it's probably the same.
I
one,
don't,
but-
no,
Oh,
no,
okay. I thought Megan had it.
no,
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Now we have, jet skis and water skis and all sorts of
Stand-up boards.
things
Right.
and
Right.
Kayaks.
Kayaks, right?
Kayaks and-
Every which
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aqua bikes. Yeah.
And last but not least, swimming. Yeah.
I can remember on Pine Island, the leeches
Oh yeah.
that were on the shoreline. There aren't any leeches anymore.
But we have crawdads. So I grew up with the leeches. That was one of the things that freaked us out a little bit. My kids grew up with the crawdads, right? So a little bit of a different experience.
I haven't seen a leech in years.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go down the 13 people
sure.
that now in today's present? Carol Kurtz, horseman, keeper owner of the homestead cabin on Pine Island. David Kurtz, cabin on Pine Island, who purchased from my Uncle John. Katie Kurtz Walsh, cabin on the end of Birch Point. Julie Mitchell Baxley, Wildwood Point on Pine Island. Tim Kurtz, cabin on Pine Island, building right next to where my Uncle John had a cabin, and now my cousin David owns it. Brian Walsh, cabin on Moose Island. Mary Kurtz, cabin on Grassy Point. Now she's kind of out of the zip code because everybody is pretty much Pine Island, the Dells area. And but we're happy to have her. She purchased, I think, like 2 or 3 years ago. It was fun. Bill Fogarty, cabin on Pine Island. That is on my grandmother's side. Again, Kurtz is bringing other people up, and that was on my grandmother's side. Maureen Kurtz Fay, she shares a cabin on Pine Island called Maple Grove. Maureen Kurtz Fay shares also a cabin on Emerald Island, or it's technically named Fay Island, and she shares it with his side of the family. Michelle Carter Ernst, cabin on Gold. See, I'm on it.
We're out of the zip code too.
I know, yeah, that's true. It's on Gold Island. Michelle Carter Kurtz also shares a cabin on Breezy Point through marriage. And last but not least, my sister Miley Mitchell Maine, cabin on Pine Island. That's 13. But I should put a 14 in there because we have a lot of cousins that come up for the summer. The one, maybe they didn't purchase something up here or for one other reason or whatever. So they come up a lot of times for the summer. They have some of their own little family gatherings. So we always see cousins and just welcome them, and of course try to get them over to the homestead or will host them, and it's just wonderful. It really is.
Now, all of these homesteads, are they, or cabins, are they all serviced by the mailboat? Because you're all on islands.
Yes.
Or most of you are on islands.
Yes. Even, yeah, are you?
We could be,
serviced?
we choose not to because of when we're up. So we come up in May and leave in October, and we live up here. Then the mailboat only services Memorial Day to Labor Day. So we have a P.O. box.
But I know on Mary Kurtz on Grassy
Yes.
Point does have, it
Yep,
goes all the way
it
over
can
there.
go. I mean,
Yeah.
my husband works for Aronson, so he periodically drives the mailboat. So we could technically have one, but that in between time, we're a little.
Mailboat person is very important.
Oh.
And ask all the dogs. They have
Yeah.
a biscuit for every one of those dogs, and they look forward to that.
My husband was the mailboat driver the year he retired from education. And
Yeah.
Gretchen said, Dick, I have the job open if you want it. And he jumped at it, and he absolutely loved it. And you're right about the dogs. You have to have the dog treats.
Oh, they let you know.
Yeah.
The mails come. They know the sound of the engine.
Mm-hmm.
And the mailboat's coming, and they're down on the dock waiting for their biscuit. It's fun.
That was always a highlight when we were on Moose Island. I have delivery now, a bank of mailboxes on Pine, and I have to walk to it too. So, Michelle,
Yes.
I think you can continue.
Oh, I can. Okay, thank you. I guess what are some of my memories? But I think one of the things that strikes me is what Julie and Katie have alluded to, how the technology has changed. My great Uncle John, Julie's Uncle John, told stories about how he'd have his job as a little boy was to fill the lamps with kerosene so they'd have lights, but his mother Helen didn't like to have the lights on, so that typically they went to bed when the sun went down, because she just would be very nervous about lighting those gas lamps. Another example is the washing. My mother-in-law talked about how she had wash days, and they'd get out the bins, and I think Mary, who's now the homestead of that side of the family, has the homestead of that side of the family. She still has the bin where they were manually washing the sheets and doing all of that. I didn't have to deal with that. We had washing machines. Although I do remember going to the Wayside
Okay.
as
yeah.
a little kid
Yep.
to do the sheets before
Tragic
we
that it
were.
burned.
Yep. Oh
Yeah.
yes. And my children didn't experience that kind of, and I couldn't imagine. I have triplets. I couldn't imagine having triplets with having to wash diapers by hand and all of that. We'd still do it though. We would have still done it, but it would have been tricky. One of the things that my kids did experience was the fact that they knew all of these relatives that were relatively distant. The fact that I'm sitting here with my second cousin once removed, or whatever it might be. My kids have those relationships too, and grew up with, like Mary Kurtz's kids,
Right.
and never would have known them before, or Tim's kids, or some of the others, which is a unique experience that Lake Vermilion provides. The other thing was we had the Wayside, and then we also had Moccasin Point.
Oh, yeah.
Hamburgers and
Oh, yeah.
fries at Moccasin Point. We miss Moccasin Point. That was always a good treat.
You could get
For
a lot
our-
for $5.
Well, I don't know if it was $5 when we went when I went with my kids, but I think I remember one time we went and my kids were probably 4 or 5, and a lot happening, and we were probably meeting other family members, and my husband thought I paid the bill. I thought I paid and we left without paying. And we went the next weekend, of course, and they said, "Oh, we knew you'd be back. Don't worry about it." But that's a very unique thing. It wasn't that long ago to experience up here that I think makes this area unique.
Well, the other thing that growing up in Tower or on the lake is that we had the Tower News. And
Yes.
did you have a relationship, each of you, with Phyllis Burgess, where every time you came into town, you paid a visit to Phyllis so she could write up that the family is here in the local news section, because she would have local news throughout, and it would just be little tidbits of what family's here, how long they're staying, and where they came from.
When my husband and I got married, we had a whole page of the Tower News of two, Lake Vermilion families uniting.
Island people.
Yep.
And then your father was real active with the Tower News, wasn't he? Just as far as sending them information.
Oh yes, but he was very active up here anyway. He knew all the people along Main Street of Tower. I thought so much about him today during the Burgess presentation and how he would have known all of those people.
I bet he would.
And he was very fortunate to have a very accurate retentive memory until he was well into his 90s. So the other thing that I so well remember too is Isla Pines, the Idlewild, and they had their parties on Saturday night.
Oh, tell us more.
Oh my goodness, and that's where everybody from Pine Island went to. The parents, when it was their night out.
For dancing and
The
drinking
whole,
and dining.
You bet, the whole thing, yeah. That was very much a part of it.
And dressing up
Oh yes, they all dressed up.
and finding babysitters.
Well, I have a wonderful photo of my grandparents in the Alice boat, and that was the first boat that they had on Pine Island, and they are very obviously going into church on Sunday, and here she is with grandfather Kurtz, and the hat is on, the gloves are on, my grandfather is in a suit and tie. My grandfather wore a suit all the time. All the time. And I think so much about my wonderful brother Bernie, who died just a year this coming October, and I so wish that he could be in my spot today, because he was such a historian, and he knew grandmother and grandfather Kurtz very, very well. And he and John Kurtz were just best of friends. And he would have added so much to my thoughts expressed today. I think one of my greatest privileges now coming up here is that I get to reunite with my cousins. Otherwise, I would not have that experience. And my daughter and granddaughter are feeling the very same way. They won't miss coming to Lake Vermilion. I'm sure that as the years mount, they'll be here some way, somehow.
That's great. It's their home. I mean, it's home for everybody.
It's not summer without coming to Lake Vermilion.
It wasn't even considered vacation, it was just something you did. It wasn't a time that you weren't gonna go to Lake Vermilion, you just figured it out.
So it's an extension of everybody.
Yes.
It's an extension of everybody's heart in your family.
Yeah, and my kids see that way too. It's just
It's always interesting bringing spouses. They don't get it. My husband's like, what, you handle groceries 6 times? Off the shelf and then, into the car, into the boat, off the boat. And then, of course, you go opposite. We have to take garbage off. And it's just like, it does take a little adjustment, in one's imagination, but it is. Yeah, and we always joked around, they didn't like the lake. We'd bring them up when they dated. It's always common.
it's the lake test.
If you don't like the lake,
You're out of here.
might not make
It's
it.
a risk if you marry before you bring them to the lake.
That's for sure. And I always made sure I, brought, but anyway, it's funny. Yeah, it's a joke in our family, and we all know it, and kind of the spouses do too. It works.
So if they're not too sure, they just ease themselves into lake life, and they learn how wonderful and
Yeah, majority of them are very supportive, and it all works. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice part.
I think it's wonderful how the friendships developed up here too. How particularly my parents were influential in other people coming. Lyman Hughes, my mother's brother. The Hugheses came because of my mother and dad. Then the McGarveys came from Des Moines. And the Hughes cottage was owned by Dr. Mance. And Dr. Mance had a sauna. And he would have sauna Saturdays. So that was really
A big deal.
it was a very big deal.
And you cleaned up for church.
That's right. We got cleaned up for church the next day. But the wonderful part about it is I look back on it, and I feel the same way about the county family. Chuck and Iredell County and their children, and so much of that family is still here too. Other areas of the lake, but Frank is still, he's still on Pine Island. But the fact that they have all become very good friends over the years, and you always knew that if you needed help, they would be there. And I particularly say this about Dr. McGarvey. My mother had some serious health issues when we were on Moose Island, and well do I remember
Oh, he was important.
the night that I came across from Moose Island about 9:30 in the evening with my two younger sisters and said, "Get Dr. McGarvey right now." And Dr. McGarvey came down and hopped in the boat, and he had his case and his pajamas, and he spent the night.
Oh, nice.
So it's just you always knew that you could depend. And then you probably remember the name of Morris Stevens. And Morris and Lyman were very, very good friends. And at that juncture of time when my mother was not well, she needed to be flown to the hospital back in Iowa. And Morris Stevens piloted a plane then, and he came right into the dock of Moose Island, picked up my mother and dad. I happened to be there, and I was a sophomore in college then.
Nice.
So,
That's nice.
and of course by that time I had two younger sisters, Jerry and Allie. There was a span of 23 years between my brother Bernie and my youngest sister Allie. So, a lot of years here at Lake
Yeah.
Vermilion.
I agree with Katie on the friendships. On my husband's side, there's been a few different folks that have come up to the lake because of the relationship that they had with Marion and Gary Rosenberger, who were his grandparents. His brother Whitey got a place up here, and now that's owned by Mary St. Ange. And the Bowmans came up on the other side of the Kurtz's homestead, bought a place, Helen and Buck Bowman, and now their family, it's passed down from their family. So I agree. I think, friends get invited up, fall in love with what Lake Vermilion has to offer, and find a place of their own.
And there's several families that have found their spouse up here. She's one of them. And then Lyman, didn't your mom and
My mother and dad met
were
here.
here.
Yeah.
which is fun.
And Maureen
Exactly.
Fay met her
Exactly.
husband, Mike Fay, up here.
So it's more than summer love,
That's right.
That's
Uh-huh.
eternal love.
That's right. Meant to be.
Lots and lots of changes. I can remember Fred Schrader coming down the back path with the chunk of ice twice a week. The refrigerator at the homestead cottage was
Ice box.
It was an ice box, and it was outside. and the bear found it. Glenn Bystrom used to get the bears out of the tree when it was necessary.
Between the outhouse
Exactly.
and the homestead, it was danger zone as far as bears. So there was a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course,
But-
we all had, it was all outhouses.
Oh,
But the homestead actually had indoor plumbing pretty early on for up
Yeah,
here.
because but
Because
that
of
was only
Grandma
for,
That
Alice,
was for
yep.
grandmother Kurtz.
Right,
Mhm.
and it, yeah,
It was
and
her-
the outhouse had a 3-holer. Two kind of regular, and then one for
For
a
the
child.
baby.
Yeah, I can remember, coming back from church, and everybody's full of, candy and sundaes and everything, and running up there, and it'd be almost in passing comics. It would almost be a family event.
That's right. There were lots of comic books up there. Mm-hmm.
But say more about your 3-holer outhouse. I mean, can you imagine? I
No,
mean,
it
you
was
know,
a family affair, and I just kind of remember it. It's weird to think of it today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's even weird that they built a 3-holer because when the cabin was originally built, my grandpa and all his siblings weren't born yet. So
Right.
they didn't know they were going to have but they were anticipating, good Catholic family and that we are.
Gonna be. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
oh, it's the great stories,
Mm-hmm.
great memories.
Yeah.
And they
Right.
continue. I mean, they never end. With the 7th generation,
Hmm.
it'll continue. And they hear all the stories that you're telling us now. Or if you haven't told them, they'll see it.
Right.
And it's just great when you pass these stories on.
Yeah.
When I think of where we are today in terms of technology and the fact that they are putting in high-speed internet on Birch Point Road
Mm-hmm.
and that I came up here, there was no such thing as a telephone. No, if you needed any type of telephone, you went to Grubens.
Or you also had to remember there was a period of time with the CB radios.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Oh,
that
oh,
was
yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. That was
CB
first.
radios, and you
Right.
could hear, "We're going into town. Do you need anything?"
Nobody had televisions.
Yep.
There just wasn't any television.
We played a lot of pickup sticks.
Yes, and
And
they
cards.
my granddaughters are still playing that, and I love it.
I know, we always play it up here. To this very day, we do that, yeah.
Fun.
My
Yeah.
grandmother we were always here around Wimbledon, and my grandmother, Fran, was she loved watching tennis. So she'd bring her little black and white TV, very small screen, but the thing was huge. And she would do her best to get some kind of reception so she could watch Wimbledon.
For her.
Uh-huh.
Good
Yep.
for her. Nice.
And now I work remote from my cabin with Starlink internet
And streaming, television.
yep,
We don't
yep.
need cable.
That's right.
Streaming. I'm
Right.
streaming on my phone.
I have
It's
the
crazy.
old dial phone
Oh.
that I found when we bought our cabin that isn't hooked up, but we just have it.
Fun. That's nice.
Just in case you need a
Yeah,
spare.
you know. It's more to see if the my kids' generation actually know how to work the dial phone. They look at it very perplexed.
I do have one fun story about my father. He was crazy about my mother all his life, really. They met in 2nd grade, and he served in World War II and was going to surprise my mother over on Pine Island. He got to leave and was coming up here, to surprise my mother. Well, he missed, and he was going to take the mailboat. Well, he missed the mailboat. And so he asked around in town, and there weren't any hotels or anything. But everybody's like, you can sleep in the jail for free. And he had his uniform on. And, so he slept in the jail for free. And then after that, walked all the way down to Aaronson's Boat Works, and surprised my mother on Pine Island, which, she was thrilled and loved to have anything going on Pine Island besides her brothers gave her a hard time. But I joke about it now, like, oh, my dad spent the night in jail in Tower. And they look at me and thinking, alcohol or, theft or something. No, he was trying to surprise my mother on Pine Island.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and back there in the World War II, that was pretty
Well,
common.
And we didn't have spare boats to just leave for some at Grubens for someone to. So yeah, there was that phone booth at Grubens,
Right.
and you might be able to call the one person on the path on Pine Island that had a phone to say, "Hey, come pick me up." Otherwise, you try and estimate when you would be there, and if someone wasn't there, you just kind of sit around and.
Well, they had this large swing
Yes,
on the Grubens
at Grubens,
porch,
yep.
and you could drink root beer,
Uh-huh.
and they had a charge account,
Candy.
and you could charge. You know, you didn't
Yep.
no permission. You were just waiting.
That
It
was
was
a
fun.
big treat for us, as being the oldest grandchild. I got to go take my younger cousins in the little fishing boat, the Alumacraft, across to Grubens, and we got to charge treats to my grandma's account. And that was, we thought we were pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you almost have jumped off the Grubens Bridge in your days?
No, no,
No, that was sacred territory.
Yeah, and we didn't really know what was underneath there, you know.
All-
If you got injured up here, and bad injured,
Oh.
besides what Dr. McGarvey, because Dr. McGarvey handled everything, but, you know, if it was pretty bad, it'd be a long ways from the hospital.
Although my mother-in-law, along with my husband, I think it was, Jeff was in high school, before they tore down the bridge, they went and sawed off a couple of pieces of the bridge.
Yeah.
And one of them we have at Breezy Point.
Yeah, the bridge was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the iconic photograph taken by Carol Ferguson.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it's just funny. Yeah.
We were talking about that last
Last
night
night.
too. I remember so well when Peter Pete, the Indian that
Oh, yeah.
we all know about, they would canoe right up to the dock at Pine Island in blueberry season. And then when they purchased Moose Island, they continued that. And well do I remember the day that my mother was out sunning herself. And who appears on the scene but Peter Pete? Yeah. This would have been in the 50s. Yeah, early 50s. And we would come into Tower to go to Zoop's and shop and all that. And you would see lots of Indians. You don't so much anymore. That was way before the reservation became so active, you know, way before the wilderness. There has been so much change since I was a child to today.
Yeah, the Indians were integrated into our schools with us. I mean, many of the Peter Pete kids were in school with me. And it's now they're mostly in the Virginia area.
Are they?
Yeah.
I would agree with Katie to some degree. There has been a lot of change. We've talked about the technology change, but I think what makes Lake Vermilion special hasn't changed. You know, the homestead
agree.
has hardly changed.
True.
You know,
The rocks never change.
No.
Right.
No,
Uh-huh.
no.
you know, the water might be low this year, higher next year, whatever, but it feels the same, I guess, maybe is the way to put it.
It's the Lake Vermilion feel. Just
Oh, I think the feel is the same. I think the integrity has been kept. But I'm very aware of the growth of Lake Vermilion in terms of people being here and the many, many new places that have been built. I think it's wonderful that they're still able to carry on like with the Vermilion Club and with what formerly was Bayview, which is now Tavern in the Bay. I mean, those places were pretty much all here when I was growing up. And to think that they have sustained. But
remember when the Vermilion Club was the Idle Hour?
I do. I certainly do. Yeah, that was the other place. You either went across to Isle of Pines or you went to the Idle Hour. They kind of rotated. So,
Well,
We appreciate the opportunity
Mhm.
Yeah,
for us
Thank
to
you.
share our
for sharing.
stories.
Yeah, hearing the story of Lake Vermilion residents and the island life that you have, and the just the multiple generations that have come up over the years, and like you say, it's still the same, but it's different.
We
in
still
some
have to
ways.
carry groceries.
Yes, right.
We still
And
have to
still
take
have to
the
take the
trash
garbage.
and carry water
Yeah.
up and down. Mhm.
Well, I think it's really important too to remember the role that the women played,
Mm.
the wives played,
Mhm.
and to this very day still play a significant role.
Mhm.
I mean, that
That's
was
right.
the homestead was truly my grandmother's brainchild,
Mhm.
just from the get-go.
And from the get-go, buying it on sight unseen is
Mhm.
how it all happened.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just know a good thing when you know it.
That's true.
Anyway, carry on, girls.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you,
Owen.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.